in San Diego State University Global Campus, and for the past few months, I've been working with your instructor, Dr. Kavita, and with our instructor, Alexa, in making this a reality where you can interact with students from the US and you know, in this collaborative project. So I'm just happy to be here and listen to Alexa's guest lecture. So good to see you all, even though I don't get to see you all because you have your cameras off, but I'm happy to be here.
It's okay, it's early in the morning. Everyone's feeling a little shy. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Alexa Mocalis. I am zooming in here from San Diego, California. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to interact with you all today and to provide you with this guest lecture. I hope that you find it engaging and insightful, and I'm just super thrilled that we had this opportunity. I know that I got to meet some of you in January, and I'm really happy to meet the rest of you here tonight. Tonight's lecture will be all about visual content, so hopefully it's material that's very relevant to you. And yeah, without further ado, if we want to maybe take some group pictures, and then I'm happy to go ahead and begin.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, girls.
Perfect.
Over to Alexa. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. So yes, welcome to my guest lecture. I hope you enjoy it. Now, I kind of wanted to get started by hearing a little bit from you all and getting that participation. So if you'll notice in the chat, I gave you a link to what's called a Jamboard. I'm not sure if you've ever used that before. It's really straightforward. If you just click on that link, hopefully everyone has access to it. And you should see my screen here now. And so basically my question for you is, what are your favorite social media platforms? So what are the social media platforms that you're all using? And the way you can add it is you click on this little icon right here, this little sticky note, you click on it, and my favorite is Instagram. And then you can just save it, and it'll pop up on here what your favorite social media apps are. So if you want to participate, I'd love to know. Again, you click on this little sticky note icon here, and then you should be able to add your favorite social media platform. So I'm just curious to know kind of what your preferences are, what platforms you're using, whether it's WhatsApp, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Facebook. Snapchat, lots of Instagram. So this is kind of what I was anticipating, really, was we all kind of gravitate towards visual platforms now. You know, we like Twitter, okay, but for the most part, the way we communicate as humans, it's really all visual now. Now, WhatsApp is obviously a messaging app, so you could consider it social media, sort of, but really at the end of the day, it's more of a messaging app than it is a social media platform. So we have Pinterest on here. That's exciting. I know that Pinterest is big here in the US. I was curious how it is kind of globally. Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So this is perfect. So I just kind of wanted to get an idea. Thank you for those of you who took a moment to share. Sorry about the technological difficulties there, but you get my point here. We are visual beings, we're visual creatures. We like to tell our stories and learn about others visually, and that is really kind of the essence of today's lecture, all about social media. So thank you very much. Okay, so today my intention here was to have you leave this lecture just with what I like to call a toolbox of different technologies, different types of visual content that you can use to really enhance your social media presence and kind of really maximize your effectiveness on different platforms, regardless of which technology it is that you're using. But we know that it's not enough to just simply pick and post videos, right? We know that it's not enough to just pick photos because we like them and post them. Hopefully what you learned in my kind of short miniature recorded lecture was this idea that we need to evaluate the strategic strength of our visual content and how we can really maximize our social media efforts. So again, today I'm hoping you'll leave here with kind of a toolbox of social media content, visual content that you can really use and harness as marketers in this digital age. Now, keep in mind that the content that I'm going to share with you today, these different types, they're not necessarily all going to be appropriate for all platforms, nor are they all going to be appropriate for all brands, but rather these are all types of content that are, reasonable activities for brands to participate in on some form, on some platform when it comes to social media. So let's go into kind of this toolbox. So first is kind of unexpected, and that is using comics on your social media platforms. And I know it seems a little bit unusual. Maybe it's not as aesthetically pleasing as, this perfectly curated Instagram platform, but think about it. When you as a brand are, you're promoting yourself visually on social media, we tend to always turn to just photos and videos. And yes, photo and videos are engaging, absolutely. But when you see content like this, you have to this kind of maybe comically driven platform, or maybe a platform that tells a comic that tells a little bit of a story. What we see is that research shows that the engagement rate for this kind of content is almost always higher than that of still photos. So we always, go to still photos, but something like this actually requires more engagement. And why is that? Well, that's because you actually have to sit here and kind of work through what they're trying to tell you. You have to read it, you have to understand it. Maybe there's no text sometimes, but you're reading through a visual, trying to understand exactly what, is there a funny story here? Are they trying to tell me how to put something together? Whatever it might mean. We like comics because they require engagement. And also we like comics because by nature, we as consumers look at this not necessarily as, oh, this brand is trying to market to me. They're trying to sell a product to me. They're trying to get me to buy something. Rather, we look at this as, hey, this is a brand that's trying to actually talk to me. Maybe they're trying to make me laugh. Maybe they're trying to encourage me to learn something new. And because we are visual learners, these types of pictures can really help a consumer, can really help a viewer understand maybe what message it is that you're trying to send to them. And we also like comics because if you think about a really heavy text, maybe there's an article and it's very heavy with text. Well, you're going to lose some consumers to the wayside because maybe there's differences in literacy levels. Maybe they can't quite comprehend that level of text, that level of literacy. And so we like comics as brands because oftentimes they can help us transcend language. Maybe they can help us transcend literacy levels, and thus are often kind of more widely available to different audiences. And we have to try to get away from this idea that, comics are just for children. They're just for children and they're just about superheroes, because they're really not. They actually help, again, kind of break these conventional barriers that we see, whether it's language or literacy. And also what's really nice is it can also help us get past, having to include really in-depth descriptions on each post. We can kind of bypass that and get people to engage with our content, click through our content without having a very long description attached. And so again, is it going to be appropriate for all platforms? Not necessarily. Is it going to be appropriate for all brands? Not necessarily. But what we like to see on different social media platforms is a variety of content. Let's share different types of content. Let's make it exciting so that the consumers don't know what we're going to do next. Are we going to come up with a video or a photo, or maybe it'll be a comic this time? It's one of those moments to provide variety on your social platforms in a way that's unique, and research proves that it's engaging, and also it's fun and playful. So if it's appropriate for your brand, it's absolutely something to consider. Here's a BuzzFeed comic joking about waking up at the crack of 11 a.m. But here was kind of a couple of examples. Sorry about that. Luckily, you didn't miss too much. All right, next is memes. We don't want to miss out on the meme content. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So next is memes. So what we know is that memes have most certainly become kind of one of the hottest communication forms in certain generations, particularly amongst millennials. And so, we all know, if you don't know what memes are, they're pieces of amusing content. Normally, it might be a static picture or a video or a GIF with kind of a silly caption that says something about what we're going through as a society, what we're going through as a generation or a certain demographic. And what we know about memes is that by nature, they are meant to be spread. They are meant to evolve, and they are meant to spread across social media. And so from a marketing perspective, when you're talking about sharing as engagement, and when you're talking about encouraging consumers to repost your content, memes work very well in that form of, hey, this is by nature meant to be shared, it's meant to be repeated, and it's meant to evolve. And so again, are all brands going to, is it going to work well for all brands? Not necessarily, but what you're trying to do is use different types of media to kind of keep your consumers continually engaged. And it's also, a great opportunity. I don't know if you discuss user-generated content in this class, but sharing and encouraging folks to, create user-generated content. It's a great opportunity for brands to utilize user-generated content and share memes when appropriate that their consumers or their followers have created. And so again, we like memes as marketers because they are inherently shareable, and we like to kind of, we like to take what other people have made and create it our own, make it relevant to our brand. So I don't know if any of you saw the movie on Netflix called Bird Box. But this is, this is kind of a silly message where, she is blindfolded in the movie, and it says, "I know you saw my text," and here I am saying, no, I most certainly didn't. This idea of felt cute, might delete later. This is a famous little dog on Instagram here. And so it's obviously silly and kind of playful content, but brands that use different types of visual content, photos, videos, memes, comics, they have a much higher return rate to their social media platforms than brands that just rely on photos, that brands that just post photos and videos. And that's because your consumers go, oh, what are they going to post next? They're always a funny brand. They're always, cutting edge, and they know what's going on with pop culture. They're in tune with, what's happening socially. And so when you talk about, again, engagement and getting people to your platform and not having to pay for ads to get them to your platform, this is a really wonderful way to try to encourage that engagement. Let's see, hopefully you guys can see my next slide here. Okay. Whew. Now, obviously, we know that social media, is a great place for memes to live. But there are a few kind of defining characteristics that we like to, why memes are so effective when it comes to engaging. And first is that they're relatable. They tend to kind of show us something that we already know to be true about ourselves or about our society. And so that's really kind of a core element of a successful meme, is that it summarizes this feeling that everyone can relate to. It's something that we can all kind of laugh at, we can all kind of get behind. So we see a lot of animals here. This is a brand of clothing. It's a company where you can kind of exchange your old clothes and buy new ones here. I thought that was kind of funny. Someone's very happy about that when they hear, they're crying with joy when they find out they can turn clothes in and get new ones. And then I don't know why, I just thought this was hilarious. Does that dog not look exactly like a banana? I don't know, I think that's too cute. But again, they're relatable. They're something we can all kind of laugh at, kind of get behind. Additionally, similarly, they're witty. So memes are meant to be clever, and they have kind of a funny way of putting obvious things in a way that we haven't really thought of before. And so, this opportunity to be playful with your consumers, to kind of break that corporate barrier with them, to show them the human side of your brand, and ultimately kind of create a community, create a moment of laughter. And with that, of course, is this idea that they're entertaining. And so with that combination of them being very relatable and clever, memes can be a really fun piece of content, kind of like an inside joke, but with thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people in a community. That being said, I said this and I'll say it again, across each different type of content, is that you really have to decide if this is appropriate for your brand. You know, I always think about certain industries, maybe banking, maybe insurance, maybe even sometimes, you know, tech companies. Is this an appropriate, piece of content for certain brands? I'm not necessarily certain. You kind of have to know your niche. You have to know your audience, and you have to decide, are they actually going to get this joke? Are they going to understand these pop culture references, this particular language that we're using? Or is it not going to hit home? And so it is true that not all brands should use memes, absolutely. But if you have a brand that's able to be quirky, a little goofy, it may be able to make fun of themselves a little bit, it's definitely a unique opportunity to be able to, again, kind of mix up the content on your page. But at the end of the day, you always have to know your demographics. Okay. All right, so next are emojis. Now, if you follow brands on social media, you may have noticed that here and there, more and more of them are starting to use emojis in their messages and in their branding. And yep, emojis are just another type of visual content for our little toolbox that we can use to strategically get our followers to interact with our brand. And so what we know to be true about emojis is that they can help really humanize your brand. And we want our brand to be humanized because it kind of drops the corporate veil. And when your audience really trusts your brand, they're more likely to recommend you to others. They're more likely to become long-term loyal customers of your brand. And so it just adds these little emojis, these comics, these memes, they add a level of extra personality and relatability to your brand. And it just kind of helps you relate better to your audience. You're kind of speaking this universal language with these emoji, and it makes it kind of more like a personal chat and less like a marketing message. But again, as always, before you stick a bunch of emojis in any kind of corporate or commercial messaging, you want to get to know your key demographics. Who exactly is it that you're targeting? But you can see here in this graph, you can see that people they like brands who are using emojis that match their personality. They're more likely to comment on brands. And this was only 1,000 users. There was only 1,000 folks in this study. But you can see here, overall, these are really good percentages. This is good engagement. I'm more likely to purchase from brands that are using emojis. I'm more likely to follow brands because, again, they feel like, hey, this is a brand that gets it. They're willing to be kind of interpersonal with me, and they're not so stiff and stuffy and kind of being very corporate. Now, we like emoji for these 3 reasons here. So again, it helps humanize your brand, but it can also add context to your marketing messages. So kind of the same way an exclamation point can add context to what you're trying to say in a text message or an email, adding emojis can do the same thing. They can convey those emotions that text alone really can't do. And so, I'm not saying that emojis are going to replace descriptions or really great copy on an advertisement, but the two can work together and add just, more depth and more meaning to the message that you're sharing. And even think about platforms like Twitter. Twitter, you have somewhat limited characters, and you can use that emoji to add a little extra context, a little extra emotion when you can't use all of those extra words you might want to. And so again, it's just this idea of engagement, engagement, engagement. When we think about social media, when we think about being successful, we have consumers that are interacting with our brand, they're commenting, they're sharing, they're reposting. And so at the end of the day, if we can use this visual content to help increase engagement, we want to do so. And there was, there's several different studies out there. There's one study that showed that using emojis in your Facebook posts can increase shares. There was another study done that said using an emoji in a tweet can increase engagement compared to those without emojis. On Instagram, there's research that shows that posts tend to get more engagement, more interaction when they include at least one emoji. And it's not about the specific statistics, it's just this idea that why are they wanting to engage more with us when they have that emoji in there? And there's something very relatable about it, there's something a little more emotional, a little more personal about it, and there's something a little bit more fun. And so we know that we can use emojis to make our brand more relatable, to make kind of everything a little more engaging, and then also to provide that context when words might not necessarily be necessary, or they might not necessarily be available. See, there's a little bit of a delay when I switch screens. Hopefully you can see this here. So these are just a few brands, kind of global brands that I thought did a cute job using emojis here. So Domino's Pizza, at one point, they had a little stent on Twitter where you could just use one pizza emoji and they would send you a link so that you could go ahead and go order your Domino's pizza on their website. It kind of was glitchy. It didn't really work great, but the idea was kind of fun. So they're they're known for using lots of emojis, especially on their Twitter platform. Coca-Cola here on Twitter as well. Again, just silly, cute things, ways to kind of create different visuals, something a little outside of just posting pictures of Coca-Cola and their products and their spokesman. And then this McDonald's one was too funny, I thought. You can see here they're using emojis to send messages. So if you drop your phone in the toilet, you're very upset, you're crying, you go get a burger, you're okay. You and your spouse, you're out shopping, your credit card's starting to hurt a little bit, but you go get a burger, life's okay. And then here you're sitting in traffic, you're crying, and then you go get a burger at the end of the day. So, these are all brands that they have the ability to be silly, but I also wanted to show a slightly more serious example where it's not always about playing, being playful and making jokes. You can also share a message that is really meaningful and kind of profound. And so here you have the World Wildlife Foundation, and they did this campaign called Endangered Emoji. And it's a quick video I'm going to show just to give you an idea of how they ran this campaign, pretty much solely using emojis. Now let's see if technology will let me play this. Let's see. Okay. So the next type of visual content is infographics. Now, for the most part, we're normally used to seeing infographics as a way to present data and heavy statistics, but infographics are also a really powerful way in terms of social media to tell a certain story. So for example, maybe you have a Facebook page, a brand's Facebook page, and you want to talk about your brand's history and their philosophy, maybe their mission statement. But let's be honest, no one really reads all of that stuff because it's often a big chunk of text. And, if you really care as a consumer, you might go looking through it. But again, because we are visual beings, when a brand finds a way to tell a story through an infographic, they have an opportunity to make really kind of profound impact on the folks who read it, on the viewers and the consumers who read it. And the research shows, we like infographics because they make information more accessible, they make it more relevant, and ideally they'll make it easier to process that information as well. And so it's just a really nice, unique way to get your story across. And here's just a couple of examples. So there's a gentleman, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, his name is Travis Pastrana, and he is a Red Bull athlete, and he does all of these crazy stunts. He's a motorsports motorsports professionalist. And he just, he does crazy, he'll jump across crazy bridges, he'll do, go with a bike or skis across ramps. And what I really liked about this infographic is, yeah, there's some statistics in here, but when you say that he jumped with a bike across 648 feet, we don't really understand what that means until we realize that that's a width of a bridge. Or he went down a ramp that's the height of 3 elephants. Or he, this is how many people watched him. And so it's just a fun way to represent information that if it was in an article, we would probably get lost in the numbers. But seeing it here, seeing it visually like this, we're a little bit more engaged to understand, okay, what ramp did he jump off of? Or how many bones has he fractured? My goodness. And so it's just a unique way to kind of tell a story. And then here's another one. When you talk about history, brand history, this is a really fun infographic sharing the evolution and the story behind how the Coca-Cola bottle changed. So from its beginning till now, with the Share a Coke campaign, it's come a long way in the different shapes and forms that it's been marketed in. And again, rather than a really long blog post on a website that maybe consumers will never actually get to, this is a fun piece of content on social media that also breaks up all of the marketing content that you might be sharing and acts as a little bit more of an educational piece while still speaking about the brand, relevant to the brand. So we like those examples. Now, as far as infographics, what do we know about them? What do we know makes them successful? These are the reasons why we like infographics. And there have been a plethora of eye tracking studies done where computers will watch how a consumer looks at a website, how they read an article, how they process data. It's a really unique technology where we can watch where consumers' attention goes and where they're paying the most attention. And these eye tracking studies have showed us that internet readers, internet viewers pay close attention to these types of, they call it information carrying images. And so rather than, LinkedIn just saying, hey, where are the best company, who are the best companies to work for? Where are the companies that are, you have the happiest, most inspired employees? They share it this way. So again, we have to work a little harder through it. We have to kind of engage with that content, but ultimately it's more rewarding than just reading a piece of text, a lot of bold print, things like that. And when the images are relevant, when the consumers care about the images that you're sharing in those infographics, we know that they'll spend more time, again, reading that than just reading text on a page. So we know that they show valuable ideas, they're attention grabbing, they're easier to understand, they're accessible, they just make content a little easier to absorb, and they also make us as consumers engage with that content because, again, like with the comics, we kind of have to work through it a little bit. We have to work a little bit harder to really understand what that brand is trying to tell us. And that, my friends, is engagement. So we love that. All right, hopefully my screen's still showing up smoothly here. So next are images. Now, obviously this is self-explanatory. We know that images are powerful. We know that, they say the saying, picture's worth 1,000 words. Is that true in marketing? Well, is it worth 1,000 sales? Is it worth the money that we're spending? Yes, it is true if you have the right pictures, if you're using the correct type of images. And so sure, yes, you're probably all already, interacting with brands that share photos and share images, but are they selecting photos? Are they sharing photos that are really engaging their audience, that are relevant to the audience, that are sending the correct message? And so when it comes to images, we know there's a plethora of research that visual media performs better than text. Articles with images get more views. Facebook posts with text also get more engagement. And so even if you have a very important long form article that you want to share, maybe it's an educational piece, maybe it's a press release talking about corporate conduct and what's going on behind the scenes with your brand, you still want to make sure that it's accompanied by some type of image or other visual, because we know that those posts will always perform better. Now, on platforms like Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok, that's all visual content. So then you just have to think about being strategic with what you're posting. But on a platform like Facebook or Twitter, if you have text, if you have an article, you just want to encourage your marketers, encourage your brand team to also include an image there when possible. And this is all really, a lot of it comes down to the fact that we as humans have shrinking attention spans. The last time I checked, I think the human attention span was somewhere between 7 and 9 seconds, which apparently is shorter than that of a goldfish. And so what does that say for us as marketers? We are hard to keep. We have to work so hard to keep our consumers' attention. They are perpetually distracted. They have so many different screens open. They are looking at us while they're moving, while they're walking, while they're, in a class, learning, whatever it might be. And so we have to work really hard to get their attention. And the human brain, this is really getting kind of scientific here, but the human brain can recognize an object, a familiar object, in something like 100 milliseconds. But that's where images come into play, because they'll recognize images before they'll recognize words. And so images really are the best way to communicate in today's very short attention span world, when our consumers they're high maintenance, they're distracted, and they have a lot going on outside of that particular platform that they're engaging with. And so, yeah, when you think about, we're all oversaturated with digital content. We have it coming at us in every different direction. And so these really large, chunks of text can be really off-putting. And so images really are more important than ever. And I wanted to kind of tie back to what I shared in my initial lecture, which is this idea of humans now have shifted from not telling a story, but showing a story. And that's also where images will really come into play. Think about it. Would you rather hear about your friend's vacation, over the phone or in a text, or would you rather see pictures of it or even see video of where they were? It's just natural. We like to show our story now, more so than we like to tell it. We're oftentimes doing both, but at the end of the day, marketing is the same way. You have to show your brand story and not just tell it. And then lastly, when it comes to actually posting images, obviously the type of content that you share is going to be different brand to brand, platform to platform. But there are, certain tips and, tricks that you can kind of try to abide by in order to get the most, kind of maximum reach, maximum exposure for your images. And I found this article that I thought wrapped it up really nicely. And they said, when it comes to sharing images, sharing any kind of still photo, you want to keep it bright, keep it clear, keep it lively, and keep it original. And so there was this research presented at it was the International Conference on Information Management, and it was 2018, and they found that images that were heavily liked on Facebook had these 4 elements to it, had these 4 qualities. And so it was this idea of, brightness, having light in the image, also having it be clear to understand. It makes sense what I'm looking at. There's nothing confusing about what it is that I'm sharing here. And then just this idea of movement and liveliness, and also originality, uniqueness, something different than what we're used to seeing. There's nothing less attractive, in my opinion, than a brand who constantly posts pictures of their own product, their own product, their own product, their own product. Something like this, it's Apple. We know who Apple is. We don't need a picture of the iPhone. We know inherently that these photos were taken with an iPhone, and they're beautiful photos. They have a hashtag going called "Shot on My iPhone." So these were actually user-generated content images here. I don't know if they're sponsored by Apple or not, to be candid, but again, it's this idea of, let people be unique use their content to your advantage, but also abide by these little rules, if you will, these kind of tricks or tips. So, you know, stock photos aren't always going to work. It's not necessarily going to get the job done, but also using your brand's product over and over again gets kind of tired. So we want to mix it up, keep it light, keep it bright, but also keep it unique and original. Let's tell a story rather than just market our product, because we know that we as humans love to hear stories. We love to tell stories. So you all are obviously using YouTube, Instagram, maybe Snapchat a little bit here and there, maybe TikTok when available. We know video is important. We know that you all are on there, but what exactly is it that video marketing can do for us? And so these are just kind of a couple of high points, kind of overall, overarching, big picture, why do we like video marketing? And as you can tell, a lot of these slides talk about engagement, because that really is the ultimate goal when it comes to social media. But I don't know if you've noticed, but particularly with Instagram, if you've logged into Instagram lately, the chances are one of the first things you'll see in your home, kind of the search feed, is going to be video content, like within the first 10 seconds that you open the app. And that's because video content typically performs best with most algorithms. Instagram is pushing Instagram Reels. Facebook is pushing Facebook Live, Facebook video, and also Facebook Stories. And they do that purposefully because they want content that keeps consumers' engagement, that keeps a viewer's attention for longer. And so from simply from an exposure perspective on these platforms, working with the algorithms, you can't necessarily beat them, but you can certainly join the algorithms. You really want to think, okay, if we create video content, not only is it going to tell a story, but it's also going to help us, increase our reach and increase our exposure on a platform where we're already competing with so many other like brands. So we love it for that. We also like video because it has a longer shelf life. And so it lasts longer on these platforms. So not only does it get more engagement, but it typically sticks around for a little bit longer. And so I myself don't have a TikTok, not yet at least. My students are hounding me, telling me I need to get one. But a TikTok video, for example, it might surface in a user's page for weeks or even months after it's first published. And that's because that video content normally encourages more interactions and more shares, which means it stays up higher in that ecosystem. It's more easily viewable, more easily accessible because it's encouraging that engagement. And so, yes, video is more expensive. It's more timely to create. It takes a little bit more effort, a couple more skills, but ultimately you'll get a stronger return. Last but not least, getting a little more dry and a little less gushy here, is it helps with search engine optimization. It helps with SEO. So if you want to just, one single reason why it's a good idea to create video for your brand, let this be it. It helps you, Google cares about video. They care about video, partially probably because they own YouTube, but they care about video, which means that your brand also needs to care about video. And so when you think about video content related to SEO, it has to do with, again, that Google algorithm and how they generate the results pages, the search pages. And above all else, Google cares about quality and they care about relevance. So those are two things that you have to think about when you're creating this content. It can't all be silly, funny content. It's still got to have that level of quality, and it also has to have relevance to your brand. But Google looks at video content and says, this is a brand that is not only, creating video, they're creating a variety of content. So they have text, but your pages are also, they're varied. They're informative, but they're also providing these, quality content. Quality content is king. So, quality content, relevant content, and that all helps boost your search engine optimization, your SEO efforts. So at the end of the day, if anything, create video content so that consumers can find you when they're looking for a brand to purchase from next. It's a great way to help with search engine optimization. A quick summary of Instagram. ephemeral content. So one of the kind of biggest types of video in the last few years is ephemeral content. And if you're not familiar with that term, ephemeral content is any content that's posted and disappears after a short period of time. So Instagram stories, Snapchat, Facebook stories, those are all ephemeral content formats. And quite simply, again, it's visual content, photo or video, that is only available for a certain period of time. And we know that millennials and Gen Zers, they love ephemeral content. But we also know that by nature, this type of video content is very engaging because A, it's authentic, and B, it causes FOMO. And so I'll start with the authenticity element of it. When you think about Instagram stories coming from brands, you're probably more likely to enjoy it or engage with it if it's behind the scenes. Maybe it's not perfectly polished. Maybe it doesn't have the swipe up link always. Maybe it's sharing kind of a behind the scenes look, a sneak peek, a Q&A, something that's giving us content that we couldn't necessarily get on that brand's website. And we love that because it shows a side of the brand that we don't see on their perfectly polished Instagram feed or that we don't see on their website. And so that level of authenticity is really powerful when it comes to stories and ephemeral content. But also there is something very psychological about it, which is the FOMO, fear of missing out. I don't know if you've heard of that term before, but it is literally a psychological term. Is it good for the human brain? No. Is it good for our anxiety? No. But from a marketing perspective, it is a great way to get people to engage with our brand because no one wants to miss out on what other people are doing. And so if you as a brand are creating that ephemeral content, those stories on Snapchat or Instagram, you're on platforms where your viewers, your consumers are always on. They're always checking. It's something like they check on average 18 times a day just to make sure that they haven't missed anything. And I don't know if any of you feel this way, but I certainly look at the stories function on Instagram more so than I look at the feed. And so rather than spending all this time on your pictures in the feed, by taking advantage of ephemeral content, by using it to, lift that corporate veil, create that authenticity, but also get your consumers in a moment where they're engaging with your brand. It is a wonderful way to, again, enhance your exposure, increase engagement, and also, again, stay relevant to particular audiences. It's not for everyone, but it's certainly for these.
Content are very much important for the brands. And with the examples you have explained, definitely it might have been useful to them. Thank you so much for the session. And thank you, Mr. Lewis, also for joining us today and be with us. Thank you so much. And we know it is night time for you, but you made this happen. Thank you so much for joining us. I thank all the students also for their participation. Thank you, girls. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great
Yes, ma'am. We enjoyed it. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Ma'am.
Bye,
Sir.
Come visit.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.